Welcome back to the SSRS training session class 3. Okay. In last session we discussed about how to use report server wizard, the project type report server wizard. So if I take a new bits environment, bits project, and if I select report server project wizard, you all know what will open. By default, the wizard will open, and it looks like somewhat like this. Let me show you an example how it looks. So when you open a new project, report server project wizard, it opens with the wizard, and if you click on next, blah blah blah, if you do all the stuff whatever we discussed, a report will be created. Okay, and now for every report, if you observe, you know very well about what is the shared data source and how it will be created, right? It can be either created while creating the report using the report project wizard. Like here, if you give some credentials and if you mark this as shared data source, it will be created once this report is finished, and you can use the shared data source again and again and again in other reports. And you might not observe that for every report there will be some configurations or some properties on the left hand side. You can see report data, right? Under that you can see some columns, and you can see parameters and so on, right? In the same way, if you go for another report, you'll find difference. So for every report, this is report specific, but you have not given anything. You have not created anything called data set or anything called data source. How these are created. And if you see the first one, you have a different set, right? So you have not created anything in special with the name data set. Then what all these things are? So while working on the report server project, okay, while working report server project wizard, you'll be selecting this output, the wizard, this particular page output will create a data source, and this particular page output will create a data set. You are not aware that you are creating a data set, and you can see it's just saying that design the query, but the output of this query is a data set. Okay, and what is data set? We will discuss about it. And next, if you provide some query here, and if you click on next, the styles, that is the report part, whatever is there in the green color, that's what you are giving as part of the styles. So you are creating all these things like ADV underscore data set. You created, but you are not aware. You just given one select statement and it was working fine, and you don't know that you are creating a data set while working on report server project wizard. Okay, now why I have explained this one is why I'm explaining about this particular topic is from next concepts onwards, next topics onwards. It's purely creating data sets and data sources. Okay, so we are done with report server project wizard, and this is the use of report server project wizard. Once the report is created, okay, once the report is created, then you can edit it. You can do whatever you want. You can edit it. You can play with that. So it will give you full advantage. Like if you don't want this column, delete the column. If you don't want this column, delete it. And if you don't want this, you can delete it. Similarly, delete this. And I think this answers to one of your questions, right? I mean, yours question. Somebody asked me yesterday, like how to modify the report. So now I designed one report and I modified, and what I set is only two columns. One is English product subcategory name, and the other one is English product name. And the same is showing here, and the same is displaying here. So once the report is created, then you can modify it using wizard. Okay. So if you want to delete, if you want to modify the data set, let's say for example, if you don't want this column, delete it. You can do that, right? The report server project wizard will help you to initiate, to start, to help you with starting the new project. That's it. New report. That's it. After that, it will be as exactly same as report server project. So I'll show you what is the difference between report server project and report server project wizard. I hope you got a clear picture about report server project wizard now. In this session, we are going to discuss about report server project, and finally, we are going to come up with what is the differences between these two types. Now, let me close this. I'm not going to use this project. This is wizard project type, right? Let me go to bids. I'm going to start a new project, and this time I'm going to take report server project type. This one, not the wizard. So I'll give it as what server project. Okay, and this is the place where the project will be created, the location. If you copy this and if you go to that particular path, then the project will be created. You can see the project related files. You added 10 reports in the last solution, right? Last project. So all those 10 files will be in the path, whatever it is specified there. And if you want to change it, you can click on browse and you can set it to something like a desktop. I'm setting it to desktop, and this will be created in the desktop now. Server project will be created in the desktop. Let's see that. Okay, I clicked on OK. The server, and if you observe the server project wizard, when I click on OK, it opened the wizard. But here, it's not opening the wizard. That is the only difference between report server project wizard and the report server project. You believe it or not, that's the only difference, and he has given the two different project types. I'll show you why I'm saying that's the only difference, and you can judge that. Okay. Before going to that, if you see, I've given it as desktop, and you can see a folder is created with the name server project, whatever the project name I've given, and in that it is empty now. There is no files. I'm yet to add the report files. So when I add a report to the project there, that will be stored or saved here in the report, project folder. Now let's start with creating the report. I hope you remember when I right click on, you are seeing the same add new report option there. So you can use wizard to create a report. Then what is the difference between report server project wizard and report server project? It's just only first time when you click on report server project wizard new project, then it will open the wizard. That's the only difference. As far as I know, that's the only difference between these two. And you can ask why he has given two different templates, why Microsoft has given two different templates, and I don't have an answer for that. I can't answer on behalf of Microsoft, right? And now let's see. I have taken report server project now, and I'm going to create a report using wizard. Okay, I'll name it as ADV underscore data and SQL Server again. I'll go for localhost, and I'll take the database name AdventureWorks DW, and I'll make this a shared data source so that the data source will be created and I can use it for the remaining reports. And in the query builder, I don't have that query. Let me write it down. Let me create it. So add the tables. I want dim products category and dim product subcategory, and I also want fact internet sales. And from this set, I'll take the required columns like English product name, and the second one was color, and here English product subcategory name, and here subcategory name, and from this I have taken sales amount and the tax amount. This was the query I generated yesterday, right? So now this is done. Click on next. I'll go for tabular, and I'll set everything in the details. First one is category, subcategory, and then color. I would like to give color. I'm just grouping the data. English product name, and then sales amount, and then tax amount. So click on next. This is fine. I'll give the name as sales report. Click on finish. So what is the difference you observe from the report server project wizard and this report server project type? Both are one and the same. The only difference is when you open the report server project wizard, by default the wizard was open, but for this the default wizard will not open. That's the only difference as for now, right? And let me increase the space, and let's see whether it works, runs fine or not. I'll give color, and then English product name, and then sales amount. Let me drag the tax amount. Okay, if I click on preview, it works fine. Perfect, right? Now, let me take, and you can see it's exactly similar to the data source, report server project wizard. The data set was created on the left hand side and the report was created using the wizard. And now, if you go to the add, you have two options. One is new item, another one is existing item. I'll show about what is new item. Existing item we will discuss after a couple of sessions. So if you select new item, that means you can add any new thing. What are all the possibilities in SSRS? One is you can add a new data source if you want, or new report, or new report wizard. New report wizard is nothing but this one. Add new report, or coming here and selecting report wizard, both are same. If you don't believe me, let me double click. Can you see? It opened the wizard. And again the same routine task, right? The options are given in two places. One is here and one is in the new item. And forget it. Microsoft is like that. And the second one is data source. If you select the data source, this is equal to creating a data source here by right clicking. Add new data source. The same option will be visible in both the places. If you want to create a data source, you can. And the third option is add a new report. So let me give some proper name for this. Sales data. If I click on add, and you can see the difference between adding a report and adding the report wizard is report wizard will open the wizard by default, and when you it will take you through different steps, and by end of all the steps it will create the report for you. But here it is not like that. You have to do everything on your own. It's all in your hands. That the wizard will not help you to create the report. You have to do from scratch, from start to end. Everything you have to do on your own. That is the difference between report item and report wizard item. And hope you got a clear picture about what is the difference between report server project wizard and report server project. Now, let's see, before going to the what is the required things and what are the different steps involved in creating the report. What is meant by report, you know very well. And what is the use of report, you know very well. What are the steps that are involved in creating the report? Let me give you the steps and then we can discuss one by one. The first and foremost thing, let's say this is your database and here you are designing a report. What is the first step you have to do? The first step is you have to set a connection to the database from where you are going to pull the data, right? Once the connection is set, the next step is pulling the data from here, whatever the data that is required for your report. So this is the second step. And the third step is designing. Making use of the data, designing the report. This is the third step. So the minimum things. Once the design is completed, then you will deploy. You will deploy the report so that everyone can see over internet. Like by passing the URL, business people should be able to see the report. So these are the high level steps that are involved in creating and moving the reports to the production or to the server. Now, while developing, we are developing the report now. We are not deploying, so this will not come in the near future. This may be in the last sessions. We are going to deal with the first three. The first one is setting the connection to the database. Second one is pulling the data, and the third one is designing of the report. Okay, and setting the connection will be routine. It will be the same. If you set the connection once, you can the same thing you can continue again and again. And pulling the data, it will be varying for report to report. Why? Because one report may need 3 columns, and second report may need 10 columns from 5 tables, and third report may need 15 columns from 20 tables. The requirement will be varying. So whenever the requirement varies, obviously the data what you are going to pull from the database will be varying. And the designing, obviously it will be changing for report to report. If I give all the 10 reports with the same design, then he will slap me. The business will slap me, saying that why I have recruited you to give 10 copies of the same report. No, right? So the design will be varying from report to report. Now, what is meant by setting the connection? How you will set the connection to the database? What is the terminology we will use here to set the connection? It is nothing but the data source. what data source will say is, data source will talk about setting the connection. This will have only setting the connection, where is your database and what is the server name and what is the type of the database server. You will provide all those information in the data source. So when I said setting a connection to the database, that means creating a data source. And we have created more than 10 data sources from yesterday, right? First one is normal embedded data source, embedded to the report. And second one is a shared data source, and third time onwards we use the same shared data source, and here also we created one shared data source. So what is meant by data source? I am specifying. So I'm specifying from where I'm going to pull the data. That is nothing but data source. And as I told you, if it is under shared resources, then it can be used again and again. See, if it is created once, I can use it in report 1, report 2, report 3, report 4, and so on, report n, if and only if all those reports are pulling the data from the same database which is specified in the data source created. Okay. And the second one, what is this pulling the data? This pulling the data is nothing but whatever the select statement we have given. We have given one select statement, right? In last session, we have created a lot of, we have given a lot of select statements. So that select statement is nothing but pulling the data. I am pulling the data. If I pass select statement, it will return me some data. I'm going to make use of the data, and we call this one as data set. In short, DS. Data set means it's a container which holds the data that will be used by your report. Data set is nothing but a container, or the one which holds a table of data. Okay, one big table or whatever may be the size of the table, it holds one table information. That is called data set. In short, it is nothing but a valid select statement which pulls the data for your report. And the third one is design. Design means, we have selected tabular format, and in that we have selected step, and in that we have enabled the drill down. We have done all that stuff, right? So that is called design part. So in last session, we have seen how to create the data source and how to create the data set and how to design the report using Wizard. Now, in this session, we are going to discuss about how we are going to create data sources, data sets, and report design without the help of wizards. Now, what is the first one? This is an empty report. This is an empty one. Nothing there. No wizard to help us. So we have to do everything manually, right? So what is the first one we have to create? The first one we have to create is data source. You have to specify this particular report, whatever I am going to design, is going to pull the data from which database. I have to specify that in the data source. I can do it in two ways. One is create a separate data source for this report, and the other one is using the existing shared data source. I can do either one of these two options. But where I have to create the data source? I don't have any options here, right, to create the data source. How can I create, or how can I use this? Where I have to specify it. To do the same, if you go to the option new, you will find new data source, new data set, new parameter, and new image. Okay. So the first two are important, and we are going to discuss about this now. So if I click on new data source, here it is giving you an option to create an embedded connection. That means a connection which is specific to this report. Let me try creating one embedded connection. I want it to be unique, so I'm giving like this. Don't use this kind of terminology, okay? And I'm giving dot and AdventureWorks DW. Click on OK, and this is fine. And click on OK, and you can see a data source is created here. This data source is specific for this particular report. Now let me add one more report. Add new item, and I'm giving the name as sales. And if I want to use the same data source, whatever I've created for the sales data, which I have set as embedded one, let me try using that. Use the shared data source reference, and you can see only one thing is showing, that is the shared data source, whatever that is available here, that is showing, and the remaining one is not available here. The other one, whatever I've created as embedded one for the sales data report, is not available. So there are two types of data source connection for any report. One is embedded and another one is shared. Shared means using the shared one, already created one, which can be shared among many reports. Embedded one means that is specific to that report. If you create one as embedded, and that is final, it is only for that particular report. Now let me use shared one for this. So select the option use shared data source and use single transaction when processing the queries. You just check this option. I'll explain you, but you need to know about transactions a lot to get the to understand this particular concept. Click on OK. Now I have not given the data source name properly. So I created one data source which is embedded and another one is shared, right? And if you see, this is shared one and there is no credentials here to modify. If you want to modify the credentials of this data source, you have to go here and modify it. If I modify it, like if I change the database to some other database, it will reflect in the report where I have used the shared one. Now if I go to this data source, what this will be pointing to? This will be pointing to the new database whatever I have selected. That is the advantage of having shared data source. And if you see the sales data which is having few embedded connection, it will be the same again. It will not change. Why? Because this is embedded to the report. So this is how you can create the data sources as one embedded option and another with the shared data source option. And let's say you don't have any data source for under shared folders. Okay. Now I'm taking a new report again. I'm taking a new report and I'm giving this as first report. And now I want to make use of the shared option. If you select here, you can see there will be no shared databases available. Why? Because I've deleted it, whatever the shared data source that is available. There are two options in for creating the shared data source. One is either click new option here so that it will take you to the same page what it will take you when you select the option here. Remember the page here. Can you see the page? Remember shared data source properties and so on. Okay. And if you come to the first report and if you click on the new data source and if you click on the use shared one and click on new, it will take you to the same shared data source properties. And if you create here, let's say I'll give dot. If you create the data source here, click on OK. And once you press the OK, the shade will be created here and it will be listed here to use. I use this new button to create the shared data source. If I don't want to use a shared one, then I can use embedded option to embed it. Create an embedded connection. Let me use this. I created the shared one, right? And this data source name, you have to give like adv_ds, which is specific to this report until this report. This report is using adventure adv_ds data source, which in turn is using a shared data source. That is the meaning of it. Okay. Click on OK. The data source is created. And now, if I want to create one more data source, can I create it for the same report? Let's say I want to create an embedded data source here. adv_embedded. So click on it. I'll give dot AdventureWorks DW. Click on OK and OK. You can see there are two data source connections for a report. Like that, you can connect to n number of data source connections for a report. So this is about creating the data sources, and these are the different options or different places where you can find the option to create the database that is embedded to the report and also the shared data source which can be used in multiple reports. Now we have seen how to create the data sources, right? And let me change the name. This is not the best name. I'll give AdventureWorks only for this one. This embedded connection, ADV. Okay. Now you know how to create the data source that is required for a report, and you know how to create a shared data source which can be used in many reports, and you also know how to use either shared data source or embedded data source in a report. Now what is the next step? The first step is done. What is the next step? Let me have one embedded and one shared one. This is, if you see, this is embedded, this is embedded one, right? So I'll name it as EMB. Okay. And I'll create one shared data source, and I'll name it as ADV underscore SHD, let's say shared, and I'll use the shared data source here. Now the next step is not design, as Divya said. The next step is the data set. You have to create a data set, or in other words, a container which will hold the data that is required for the report. Now let's see the steps involved in creating the data set, and this is the place I'm going to answer the question asked by Swati, like which data source will be taken here. Now where you can find the option for creating the data set. Next to the same, under the data source, you can find the option data set. If you select the data set, the first thing that it will ask is the name of the data set, what name you want to give. Let's say I'll give AdventureWorks underscore data set. Okay. And the next option is data source. What is the data source you want? You can see there are two data sources. I have created two, AdventureWorks EMB and ADV underscore SHD, means shared and embedded. You have to pick. And if you feel like, okay, these two are not the correct one, I want to create a new one, then you can also create a data source from here. Again, the same page open, click on this, and let me show you one. ADV underscore test, this is the third one I'm creating. Which one you want to go? Let's go for embedded one, embedded to this report. Dot, I'll go for, let's say AdventureWorks CW. Click on OK and click on OK. Once you clicked on OK, you can see the adventure test is available here. So you can select it and write the query here and click on OK. The data set will be created. And if you don't know how to write the query, you can make use of the query designer that is available here. And edit as text, if you check that, again the same tables. Let me take one simple table. Instead of going for all, or I'll take only a couple of tables, not all the tables this time. I've taken fact table, and I'm taking product table, and I'm taking sales amount from this. That is why I allow to copy the query and use it again. It's hectic writing. So on product name I'm going for. So now I specified the select statement which is required, okay, which is required for this report, or the select statement which is going to pull the data that is required for this report. And once it is given, click on OK. You can see adventure test, the data source is created. Under that, the data set is created. So this data set is using the connection AdventureWorks. Now I'm going to the data connection. I'm changing it to embedded, and if I click on OK, you can see this data set is moved under ADV underscore EMB. That means this is pulling data from that particular connection. If you know that there are a couple of connections which are not at all used, then you can delete it. You don't need it anymore if you feel like. Okay. And whatever the data set you create, and whatever the data source you will specify in that, the data set will be created under that data source, as you have seen here. And data set is nothing but a simple, it's a container. If you write either a select statement, or if you write an MDX select statement, or if you write any database language select statement which you are used in the connection string, data source connection, and or you can also use stored procedures, which returns a table, or which returns some data that is required for this report. We call it as data set. And if you see the data set, mainly it consists of a simple select statement like this. Okay, most of the cases it will be either select statement or stored procedure if you are pointing to SQL Server, and if you are pointing to SSRS Cube project, then it will be MDX query. And you can see this query of designer option. will help you in designing the query. Okay, and this import option, let's say you have a query written in your SQL, what is the browser, right? And you save that file. How it will be saved? It will be saved as .sql, and you can import it. If you have any such .sql files, if you point to that, you can see .sql or .rdl. If you point to that, it will go and get the query from that particular data. And there is one beautiful option here. If you observe, you can take either query files or .rdl files. What is meant by RDL files? Report data language. That means another report. If I select any other report, and if that report is having any select statement, it will take that select statement. Let's try that, okay? We have created a couple of reports in last session, right? I think it's using Visual Studio 2008 under projects. The project name is not this. Where I've created the project. I think it moved to this guy. I don't know where I think I deleted the project. Where is that? Expression. 1 second, let me search that here. Where I set the project, I don't remember it. I created one in desktop. That is just now I created. Sort by date modified. Let me go to that. This is the project what I have created yesterday. Okay, here it is. So I'm taking some report. Let's see what will happen. And you can see the query that I have used in that report is showing here. And if I click on import, the query will be imported here. So if you want to copy a query from the another report file, then you can use that option import. Right? This is a beautiful option, right? If you know, if you use the query that is used in another report, then obviously it will be shown and can be imported. And if I select any other one which is having more than one, I think it will show dataset 2, dataset 3, dataset 4, dataset 5, and so on if you have more than one. If you select dataset 2 and click on import, that data will be imported. That query will be imported to your query window here, query box here. And once you click on OK, the new set of columns will be shown here based on the query that you have imported or modified, the query that you have given. So this is really a beautiful option, right? Now let me create a data set for this. Add new data set, and I'm going for this, and I'll go for import. I'll say category wise sales. Okay, this is the set. Click on import, and let me give some name. Imported data set. Okay, click on OK. The data set will be created with the same columns or with the same query that is used in another report. So this is really, this is how you can create the data set. If you observe, I have created very simple data set here, and it will not be the same case always. There will be a lot of complex queries that you need to write, but this is too early to discuss about a lot of complex queries. And these queries will come under SQL Server training sessions or SQL Server concepts, but not here in SSRS. SSRS mainly concentrates on how can you design the report. Okay. If you are good in writing a SQL query, that's why I asked how many of you guys are good in SQL Server. Why? Because this needs SQL Server or any database language, any one database language to write the queries. Let's say you want to use stored procedure in SQL Server. And most of you guys don't know stored procedure. You will come to know in short, in next couple of weeks. Stored procedure will have some predefined functionality. Some functionality which will be pre-compiled, and it will improve the performance of the queries generally. So if you select the stored procedure option, it will show all the stored procedures that are present in this particular database which is used in this data source. Right? I've used AdventureWorks DW data source for this ADV_EMB AdventureWorks database in this ADV_EMB data source. So the stored procedure that is present in this one will be listed, and if I click on OK, it should take, and it is expecting some values. This is hectic. I will discuss about the stored procedure second. So this is how you can go for either stored procedure or SQL select statement. And SQL select statement, again you can write it directly or you can import it from different reports like this. So this is about data sets, and we would have so many other options like parameters, fields, options, filters, and everything will come after a couple of days. I mean, let's go with step by step. Okay. Now we created the data sets and we created data sources. What is the next step? What is the third step in that we discussed? Yes, the third step is designing of the report. Okay. And if you want to modify this data set, what is meant by modifying? Either removing a column or adding a column or something like that. If you want to remove a column, let's say sales amount, delete it from here. And you can see fields what are all there. The sales amount is gone. If you click on OK, that is gone. Modifying the data set is nothing but adding a new column or removing an existing column. That's what you can do. You can't do magics, right? Data set is nothing but a simple select statement. It's nothing but which returns a table, which returns some output, table output, right? So modifications in the sense, what you will do is you will be changing the query. That's it. If you change the query, let's say I change the query to like this: select star from dim product. So that's it. The data set is modified now. All the columns that are present in the dim product, whatever the select statement I have written, whatever the columns that are present in that will be written here. Right? This is called modifying the data set. If you want to modify the data set, this is how you can do that. The next part is obviously designing of the report. How to design? There is nothing here. There is no option under new also. There is no option, like you have hardly image option. But this image will not help you. How to design it? Where can you find the option? So if you go to the view, you can find report data, which means the one which will show here. If this get closed by mistake, then you have to go to report data to open it back. Remember that is very important. And in the same way, you will find an option toolbox in that. So Microsoft has provided a couple of items, couple of tools to design your report. So that is why I said it is a limited one. Whatever the tool this guy is providing, you have to make use of this to design the report. We can't go beyond this. We can write some custom coding, but this is the max. Most frequently you can use. At 90% of the report you have to use this, and 10% you have to write custom coding, which will be normally people don't suggest writing custom coding unless it is required and mandatory. So if you see, there are different options like text box, line, table, matrix, rectangle, list, and so on. We have seen only two options in Report Server Project Wizard. What are those two? One is table and another one is matrix. Now let's take the same table. I dragged and dropped the table. Fine. Now I got a table to design my report. Right? I have a table to design the report. How to design it? How to add a column to this? What column, where to show? All those information you have to provide, right? So if you want to see, if you want to show category name in the first column, drag it and drop it in it. And second column, drag and drop it. And also you have an option here. You can see whenever the mouse is on a particular cell, an icon is getting appeared. If it is hidden now, it is appear. Invisible, visible, right? If you click on that, it will show all the columns that are present and English product name. And let me add, if I want to insert one more column, this is the table borders, right? Whatever you are seeing, the dark, light brown color one, that is the table borders. This is the column level, and this is the row level, and this is for complete table, for selecting the complete table, right? These properties will have complete table properties, this will have column properties, and this will have row properties. Okay. Now if you want to add a new column, right click here, new column, right side or left side. I want to add it on right side, click on right, and a column is added, and I want to show color here. Add the color, and add one more column to the right, and I want to show sales amount. Let's add sales amount. and one more column to the right or left. You can whatever you wish to, wherever you wish to, and once it is done, then design it properly, like increasing the size and so on. And once it is done, preview it. You don't worry about these parameters, sir. These are created by mistake. When we selected the stored procedure, these two are created. Okay, I deleted it. Now, once it is done, if you see the report is executing and it will generate just like the report what it was generated when we created using report server project wizard. Right? Now, if you observe, we have seen how to set the data source, that is physical connection, and we also discussed about how to create the data sets and what is the use of data set and what it holds. And once it is done, how to design a report. We have done a basic or simple level reporting. If you don't use wizard, you can see how many steps you have to do manually. Like coming here and creating the data source, and then coming here and creating the data set, and then taking the table and dragging and dropping and so on. Right? Now, I'm adding one more table. By going to the toolbox, I'm adding one more table. Now, if I click on this, why it is not showing columns? Why it is showing two data sources that are available? Earlier here, it was showing columns. If you observe, when I click on this, it is showing columns. But here, it is not showing columns. It is showing the data sources that are available. You can see it is showing the two data sources. Under that, if I go data set, under that columns are coming. Right? This is an extra step, right? But if I select the first one, let's say category name, I selected, and the next time onwards it will show the columns. What's happening in between these two? Selecting the first column and before that and after that. What's happening? There is a property called data set name. When you select, okay, when you select the first one, I'll delete this, okay. I'll delete this guy. Now I have not set the data set name. The data set name is not set. When I select any one field, then it will directly take the data set name. Whatever the data set name is here, that is IMP underscore data set, will be taken and assigned to this table. If I select first column from this one, let's say this one, then adventure works or something, whatever the data set name will be set for this table, and automatically the columns will be shown from that. That means what you understood from this one. From this functionality, what you understood. One table can have one data set. Now this data set is set. Right. That's it. You can use another columns, whatever the columns you want from the same data set. You cannot use from the another data set. And where this property is setting and how if you want to change the property. If you go here, if you select the complete table, and if you go to the properties, here you can see properties window, right, icon. If you click on this, here you can find the option data set name. See, it is set to ADV data set, and that is why it is showing. If it sets to IMP underscore data set, now it will show only the columns that are present in the IMP underscore data set. Right? And let's say this is the table I have dragged and dropped. First time it is showing 2. Instead of coming here directly, if you go to the properties window and if you set the dataset name to any one of the dataset that you think you say that you are going to get data from, then automatically only the columns that are present in the dataset will be pulled. So for one table, it's only one dataset. You can't have more than one dataset for one table. And if you execute it, it will show both the tables that you have designed. So this is about the designing part, and this is the basic design. This is not the complex design. We have done only simple and basic design. So we have done data sources, data sets, and simple tabular design. And how to see. The preview option is to preview and see whether the report is coming as expected or not. Okay, I'll put an end for this session here. Why? Because I want you guys to practice it a lot. I want you to practice the data set, data sources, and creating the basic table using an embedded data set, embedded data source, and shared data sources. Practice and get the complete grip on this, so that we'll be discussing a lot a lot of different varieties of design from next session onwards. So it's better if you have good knowledge on these base concepts by next session. Thank you guys, and I'll catch you tomorrow in next session, and I'll share the video in half an hour or so. Just go through the video as many times as possible and practice it as much as you can. Thank you and have a good day.